Hey guys, it's Lolo with Grateful Gratitude, and I am here once again with my good friend Kris, who is producing my podcasts and these videos for me, while our dear friend Frida is convalescing and getting better. So, hey Kris, I did a blog last week.
Yes.
I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a boxing match and I'm a prize fighter, that every time I turn around, there's that another jab, another punch, and whether it's to my jaw, my stomach, whether it's financial or with a friend or a medical emergency, I just I feel a little beat up. How are you doing?
I feel like those times really come and go. You feel like you've got, sometimes, if we're using the example of a boxer, sometimes you feel like you're the guy who's one punch the knockout, right? And you can take your victory and you can leave. And sometimes, as you mentioned in your blog, you may end up being the winner, but you've got a swollen eye and you're bloody and you're ready to do nothing for a week. And I felt that way too, especially recently. I lost my job a couple months ago working for ESPN, and that was devastating. That really was hard for a long time, and I felt exactly like you did. It felt like every turn, every time I woke up, every time I thought about it, it was a punch to the gut or a haymaker right across the face. But what I've now come out of it as, I do feel like the guy who was bloodied and beaten, but is the victor at the end. And I feel like that because now I've moved into a job where I get to meet and talk with great people like yourself. And one thing I'm incredibly grateful for, it was an answer to prayer, but it came with some punches along the way, is I now get to spend more time with my family. I get to spend evenings with my wife, and I get to put my daughter to bed, which was something that I didn't get to do before. So I would encourage you, and I would encourage those who are listening, is that just like a boxing match, I mean, you're gonna get beat up along the way, but even with taking some punches, there's a way to come out with a victory at the end.
And my story is very similar to yours, Kris, with COVID. All of a sudden everything was shut down, and my largest client, I do promotional products, that's my 9 to 5 job, outside the ministry, and it's a local university, and this university had $10,000 in orders placed with me, that when the lockdown happened, they froze the budgets, and I kept getting email after email. We have to cancel our order. We can't pay for it. Cancel. And within like about 15 minutes time, I was like, all my hard work, all my sales are gone. I have nothing. I'm scared because of COVID. I don't know what's happening in the world. And I kind of had to stop and take a breath, because I was being punched constantly from my email and my texts on my phone that morning. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to go away. There's nothing I can do about it. I have no control over this. What am I going to do to come out as the winner? And what I decided to do was to focus more on the ministry. Again, I work one-on-one with people, handing them hearts, praying with them, hugging them, and that was all gone. So I did a Zoom meeting with a few of my friends that I call my girlfriends for good. And we started brainstorming. We're like, how can we get hearts out to people? What are we going to do in order to not flounder and not be in a pity party? What are we going to do? And someone mentioned that a local food pantry had people lined up 1.5 miles down the road waiting for food. And they said, why don't you reach out to them and see, maybe you could get hearts there. Long and short of this story is, I met with them. I toured the whole facility, and the founder of this food pantry actually said, I know you. I've got one of your hearts. And I had never met her before. And I said, you do? She said, yes. I went to an event and they were placed at every single setting for people to take home. Well, I honestly knew that was the chamber gala because they had bought 300 hearts from me to do this. And I realized, she goes, yes, that's been sitting on my desk since February. And this was about May at the time. And she said, I've been meaning to reach out to you because I think you've got a good ministry. And again, to get to the point of this story, they were doing a food drive for everybody in the county. All you had to do was prove residency. You didn't have to prove need. And she said, why don't you come and hand out hearts? Come 3 hours early before it starts. Just go car to car and give out hearts. And I said, okay, how many hearts would that be? And she said, probably 600. Well, that morning, it was a Saturday morning, I enlisted 3 of my friends to go with me and do this. And I loaded up every heart I had here in my office, and it was 1,204 hearts. And I want to tell you, Kris, I think you know this story, but in 3 hours' time, we literally handed 965 hearts to people, prayed with them, and just told them that God's there for them. This is just a season. As much as I am thrilled about that, I was disappointed because we only got to half the cars. There was 2,000 cars that day. But had I been doing my 9-to-5 job, this opportunity, this blessing would have never come up. And as I was feeling sorry for myself being the boxer getting beat up, God picked me up and made me the Prizefighter.
That's right. And it's sometimes you've got to go through the tough times. You've got to deal with the punches to get to the victory, to end up with the win at the end. And you're right. It is difficult in those times to see it and to see how God is working. But that's why I think we've got to have that gratitude and that understanding that God has our best in mind, and he's got a plan for us. And at the time, after losing my job, it certainly wasn't the best time for me, and I couldn't see the best outcome. Just like I know after losing this order and the difficulties with your job, you couldn't have seen the benefit. But now we can look back and we can say, I only got to this point because of the difficulties that I had to deal with.
And I ask people to always remember these stories, because this is how we build our faith, and this is how we know that we can trust God.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's in the time when you're dealing with the difficulties, it can maybe be a little bit faith shaking, but when you come out through it on the end, it's absolutely strengthening. And I've, at this moment, never felt closer, especially where I was comfortable before all that happened.
I always think if we reference back to the Bible where, we know that God is only going to equip us for the things that we can handle. And I always want to emphasize equip us, because we don't have what we need until he gives it to us. And we also remember God always brings us out better, no matter how difficult it looks. I had doubled the amount of hearts I gave away in just 3 hours for the previous 2 years. So it's like, our Bible is there for a reason, and it reminds us of the good that God offers and the peace and healing that Jesus gives us. And we may feel like that battered and bruised up boxer, but remember that we heal, and the only way that we heal is with God.
Yeah, you're right. And I think you got a good point pushing it back to the Bible. I think of Joseph at the end of Genesis, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, and he was falsely accused by his boss's wife. And anyway, long story short, the guy had a lot of bad things happening to him. But when you look at it at the end, he ended up the number 2 in Egypt, and he was able to save his family and his people from famine. And he wouldn't have been there without dealing with those difficulties. So you're right that even if we haven't had a situation like that in our life, we can go to the Bible for continual encouragement and maybe, a look at, hey, this is, if I am in my difficult moment, maybe I'm somewhere along in Joseph's life, and just that new position is waiting right around the corner.
And that's such a good example, because Joseph was sold into slavery, and then his family had to turn to him when he was the one that controlled the food and the things that they needed, and he gave it with grace and didn't hold a grudge. And look at Job too. Job lost his his kids, he lost all his money, he would had illness, he had so much piled onto him, and yet God brought him out double better. And we need to understand that this is God's plan, and we need to just roll with it and take those punches and take those little cuts to know that we will heal and we will be the prize fighter that he wants us to be.
You're right. I don't think I could have said that better myself.
Well, thanks, Kris. And it's been a pleasure being with you today. And even when Frito is well, it's going to be three of us. It will never be without you again. So,
Well, I appreciate you welcoming me on. I enjoy our talks, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. So thank you. Thank you.
you are so welcome. And thank you, everybody, for watching.